The forest lay under a heavy silence, broken only by the whisper of the wind through the frost-covered trees. Snow clung to the branches like fragile crystals, glittering under the dim light of the blood-red moon. Wolves prowled through the woods, their eyes glinting with purpose, pride, and sometimes cruelty. Among them was Lyra, small, frail, and often invisible to the eyes of the pack. Lyra walked carefully, her paws sinking slightly into the fresh snow. She had always been an Omega, rejected by her own kind, overlooked, and ridiculed for her gentle nature. The stronger wolves of the pack believed weakness was a disease, and any display of compassion was a mistake that could cost lives. Lyra had learned early that kindness was a secret, a treasure to keep hidden. Tonight, the wind carried a faint whimper, soft and desperate. Lyra's ears pricked up. She followed the sound through the frozen underbrush, moving with the quiet steps of one who was used to being unnoticed. There, near a broken tree trunk, she found it. A small, white-furred pup, barely able to lift its head. Its fur was matted with blood, and one leg hung awkwardly, twisted in pain. The other wolves of the pack were nearby, but they ignored it. They passed by, judging the pup's weakness as a burden, a creature unworthy of care. A pang of sorrow hit Lyra's chest. Without thinking, she stepped closer. The wind howled, carrying a chill that made her shiver, but she ignored it. She lowered herself, pressing her body close to the trembling pup. "Shh, it's all right," she whispered softly, though she knew the pack would consider such words foolish. "I'll help you." She wrapped the pup in her fur, her warmth seeping into its small, trembling body. The pup shivered less, but its pain was still sharp, and it whimpered at every movement. Lyra's heart ached, but she refused to turn away. She could not leave it to die. Not like this. Unseen by Lyra, a pair of glowing amber eyes watched from the shadows. Rion, the alpha king of the pack, had been tracking her from a distance. Strong, imposing, and feared by every wolf, Rion was a figure of cold authority. His fur was dark as midnight, and his movements were silent yet commanding. He had seen the pack's wolves ignore the pup. But what drew his attention was Lyra. The way she moved, the way her heart reached out to something so small and helpless it was infuriating and unfamiliar. Rion's jaw tightened. Compassion was dangerous. It could lead to weakness, disobedience, even chaos. And yet, as he watched Lyra cradle the pup, a strange curiosity stirred within him. He had never seen an Omega defy the rules so openly. Lyra struggled to lift the pup, its small body heavy in her arms despite its size. Snow drifted around them, cold and biting, but she pressed on, determined to reach her den. Every step was difficult. The wind threatened to knock her down, and the forest seemed alive, with unseen threats. Yet, she did not falter. "You are stronger than you think," she whispered to the pup. "I will keep you safe." The shadows shifted behind her. Rion followed, keeping his distance, silent, yet calculating. The pack had trained him to notice weakness, but Lyra's actions confused him. She was small, fragile even, yet there was a fire in her eyes, a defiance that demanded attention. Hours passed as Lyra trudged through the frozen forest. She stumbled, once nearly falling, but the pup whimpered and she pushed herself to rise. Finally, she arrived at a small den, hidden beneath a thicket of pine trees and rocks. It was modest and warm, a secret refuge she had claimed for herself. Inside, the air was filled with the faint scent of herbs and old fur, a place untouched by the pack's harsh judgment. Lyra laid the pup down gently, wrapping it in soft layers of fur she had collected. She worked quickly, inspecting the wound on its leg. It was deep, and she knew she would need to apply herbs and keep it immobile. Carefully, she set to work, her hands steady despite the chill in her bones. "Don't worry. You're safe now," she murmured. The pup's eyes met hers, wide and filled with fear. Yet slowly, as her warmth seeped in, trust began to grow. Outside, Rion remained unseen, watching. He had followed her to the den, drawn by something he could not name. He had expected weakness or failure, but instead, he saw courage. And something else, a spark of life, fragile yet unyielding. The night deepened, and the forest grew quieter. Lyra worked through the hours, tending to the pup's injuries, feeding it bits of meat she had saved. She hummed softly, a tune she had learned from her mother long ago, a song of hope and survival. With each note, the pup's whimpers grew softer. Slowly, it began to rest, leaning against her chest as if sensing that she would protect it no matter what. Rion's heart, though hidden beneath layers of authority and discipline, began to stir. He was used to strength measured in dominance, obedience, and fear. But here was something he had never understood, gentleness that demanded respect. And yet, the forest was not kind. A low growl echoed through the trees, distant but deliberate. Lyra froze, her ears twitching. The predator was near, drawn by the scent of blood. Her instinct screamed at her to run, but she could not leave the pup. Rion's eyes narrowed. He stepped closer, just enough to see the shadows between the trees. His presence was like a blade of cold steel, commanding attention. Yet, he did not interfere. He would watch, test, and perhaps learn something from this fragile Omega who dared defy everything he believed in. The growl grew louder, closer. Lyra's paws trembled as she clutched the pup. She had no weapon, no armor, only her courage and determination. "Stay close. I won't let anything happen to you," she whispered. The pup nuzzled her, a small spark of trust in its fearful eyes. The snow swirled around them, a storm of frost and wind, but Lyra pressed forward, stepping out of the den and into the open forest. She moved carefully, avoiding branches and rocks, every sense alert. And then she saw it. Two yellow eyes in the darkness, low to the ground, muscles tensed, and teeth bared. The predator had found them. Lyra's heart raced. She did not know if she could fight, but she refused to give up. She raised her body over the pup, a shield of warmth and courage. The predator growled and advanced, but Lyra's voice rang out, sharp and commanding despite her fear. "Stay back," she shouted. The predator hesitated, caught off guard by her boldness. And in that moment, Rion stepped from the shadows. His massive form towered over her, fur bristling, eyes like molten amber. With a deep growl, he faced the predator, asserting his authority without a single movement of aggression. The predator snarled, weighed the challenge, and then, with a flash of teeth, retreated into the darkness. The wind carried its growls away, leaving only silence and snow. Lyra fell to her knees, trembling, clutching the pup to her chest. Rion approached slowly, his gaze fixed on her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Words were unnecessary. He had seen her courage, her compassion, and her willingness to defy fear itself. "You saved it," he said finally, his voice low and measured. "You risked everything for it." Lyra looked up, meeting his gaze. Fear and fascination battled in her eyes. She had expected anger, scorn, maybe even punishment. But not this, the Alpha King himself, acknowledging her actions, his gaze filled with something she could not read. "I couldn't leave it to die," she whispered. Her voice was small, but firm. "No one else cared. I had to try." Rion's jaw tightened. He turned slightly, glancing at the snowy forest around them. "You are unusual," he said, "and dangerous, but not in the way I expected." Lyra did not move, She felt the weight of his gaze, heavy and powerful, yet not entirely threatening. Something had shifted between them, a recognition neither could deny, a connection born of shared courage and quiet defiance. The wind howled through the trees, and the snow fell harder, covering their tracks and hiding their presence from the pack. Lyra hugged the pup closer, shivering, but feeling a strange sense of safety under Rion's watchful eyes. And somewhere deep in the forest, the night held its breath, as if waiting for what would come next. The frozen forest was quieter now, the predator gone for the night, leaving only the soft hiss of the wind through the pine trees. Lyra returned to her hidden den, the small white pup cradled in her arms. She laid it gently on a bed of soft fur she had gathered, and it curled into her warmth, exhausted but alive. She named it Fen, for the pale color of its fur reminded her of mist over winter streams. Lyra worked carefully, cleaning the pup's wound with herbal poultices she had collected in secret from the forest. The scent of the herbs was faint but soothing, and Fen's whimpers slowly gave way to soft sighs. Lyra's small paws moved with precision, her hands steady despite the cold that gnawed at her bones. Every movement was an act of defiance, a rejection of the pack's harsh belief that weakness should be abandoned. Outside, the forest remained shadowed and silent, yet Lyra sensed she was not alone. Rion, the Alpha King, had not left. He crouched among the trees, dark fur blending with the night, observing her quietly. He did not approach, nor did he make a sound. He simply watched. Lyra sensed a presence, but she did not panic. Perhaps it was the wind, she told herself, or perhaps the forest itself was alive. Yet when she glanced toward the shadows, she caught the faint gleam of amber eyes watching her. For the first time, she did not feel fear, only curiosity. Days passed in a slow rhythm. Lyra fed Fen small portions of meat, gently encouraging it to move its injured leg. She hummed soft songs, melodies that seemed to carry warmth into the cold, dark den. Each night, she wrapped Fen against her chest and whispered stories of the forest, of rivers that ran golden under the sun, and of stars that fell like fire in the night. Fen's fur began to regain its luster, and the pup's energy slowly returned. Yet Lyra noticed something else. Her own heart, so long dulled by rejection, began to feel alive again. The small creature depended on her entirely, and in return, it offered trust, love, and hope. She realized that caring for another life had awakened something in her she had forgotten existed. Strength, born of compassion. Rion's visits became more frequent. He never spoke, never stepped into her den, but he observed her every action. He watched how she nurtured Fen, how her eyes softened when the pup looked at her with trust, how her movements held patience and determination. He had seen many strong wolves in his time, fighters, hunters, leaders, but none like Lyra. She was small, fragile, yet braver than most, and her courage did not come from dominance or ferocity. It came from the heart. At first, Rion had thought her foolish. What could an Omega do in the wilderness, caring for a weak pup while danger lurked in every shadow? But as the days passed, he could not deny the truth. Her heart, though gentle, was fearless. She defied fear itself. One evening, Lyra sat near the den's entrance, brushing Fen's fur with her claws to remove clinging snow. She hummed softly, the tune floating into the frozen night. A sudden howl echoed through the trees, a warning from the forest, or perhaps a challenge. Fen trembled at the sound, and Lyra held it close, her own ears twitching. "You are safe," she murmured, her voice firm despite the chill in her chest. "No one can harm you while I am here." Rion stepped silently from the shadows, so close that Lyra could feel his presence even without seeing him. He did not speak, but his eyes were fixed on her, intense and unyielding. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She had seen him before, of course, but never this close. His presence was commanding, overwhelming even, yet it did not frighten her. Instead, It stirred something unfamiliar, a mix of awe, curiosity, and something warmer, like a flame she had never dared to light. "You are bold," he said at last, his voice low and measured, carrying the weight of authority. Lyra looked up, meeting his gaze. "It is not weakness," she said softly. "It is life. And life deserves a chance." Rion's amber eyes narrowed slightly. He had never heard an Omega speak with such conviction. Most were silent, submissive, invisible. Yet here was Lyra, small, yet defiant, fragile, yet strong. He did not know whether to admire her or reprimand her. Perhaps it was both. Night after night, Rion continued to watch, never approaching too closely. He saw Lyra laugh quietly as Fen stumbled across the den, chasing a shadow of snow. He saw her grow anxious when Fen cried in pain. He saw her determination and patience, and each sight chipped away at the rigid rules he had long enforced as Alpha. One night, the forest whispered of danger again. A low growl reached Lyra's ears, faint but unmistakable. She froze, holding Fen tightly. The pup whined softly, sensing her fear. Rion's ears twitched. He stepped closer to the den's edge, muscles tensed, eyes scanning the darkness. The predator was near again, drawn by the scent of blood and weakness. Lyra's heart raced. She did not run. She could not abandon Fen. Not now. She stood, body trembling. Yet her voice rang out with determination. "Stay back. Leave us." The predator hesitated, caught off guard by her courage. Rion emerged from the shadows, larger and darker than the night itself. His presence was like a storm contained within fur, radiating power. The predator snarled, measuring him. But it backed away, unwilling to challenge the Alpha. Lyra's chest heaved, both with fear and relief. She looked at Rion, unsure what to say. He gave no praise, no scolding. He simply watched her, his amber eyes unreadable, as if he were studying a rare and precious creature. Days turned into weeks. Fen grew stronger under Lyra's care, and so did she. She no longer hid in the shadows, nor did she tremble at the pack's judgment. She had found her own strength, a quiet power rooted in love and determination. Rion's visits grew longer. He did not speak much, but he watched, and slowly, he began to understand. Strength was not only measured by size, speed, or dominance. It was also measured by courage, compassion, and the willingness to protect those who could not protect themselves. One evening, Lyra sat outside the den, Fen asleep at her side, gazing at the crimson moon above. The forest was quiet, snow falling softly like a delicate curtain. She sensed Rion near, as always, but she did not fear him. Instead, she felt something else, a strange connection, unspoken but undeniable. "You are unusual," Rion said, stepping into the moonlight, his shadow long and dark. "Most would fail, but you endure. You care when the world tells you not to. You defy everything I know about strength and weakness." Lyra smiled faintly. "Maybe strength is not always about power," she said softly. "Sometimes it is about heart." For a long moment, they regarded each other in silence, a quiet understanding passing between them. The bond of respect and curiosity had been formed, fragile yet strong, like frost-covered ice that could support weight if treated carefully. But the forest was never truly safe. A distant howl echoed once more, faint and haunting. Lyra tensed, holding Fen closer, while Rion's eyes narrowed, alert and watchful. The world outside the den was dangerous, but something more dangerous now stirred feelings neither of them fully understood, yet neither could deny. The night seemed to stretch endlessly, the blood-red moon casting long shadows over the snow. Lyra knew that caring for Fen had changed her. She had grown stronger, braver, and more determined than she had ever been. And she knew that the Alpha King's attention, though silent and distant, was changing him as well. The bond between them was unspoken, fragile, yet undeniable. It was a connection forged in courage, compassion, and quiet defiance of a harsh world. And as the night deepened, Lyra realized that this was only the beginning not just of Fenn's survival, but of something larger. Something neither she nor Rion could yet name. The forest held its breath, the snow drifting silently around them. And the story of the rejected Omega, the fragile pup, and the Alpha King, who watched in the shadows, was far from over. The frozen sun rose weakly over the horizon, casting pale light over the jagged cliffs that marked the heart of the wolf pack's territory. Snow drifted slowly, settling like dust upon the rocks, and the forest seemed to hold its breath. Lyra's den, though hidden and protected, could not remain a secret forever. Whispers of the small Omega caring for a weak pup had begun to reach the pack. By mid-morning, a group of wolves arrived at the den's entrance, their eyes sharp with suspicion. Among them were the council elders, their fur graying with age but eyes keen with judgment, and a few higher-ranking wolves who resented Lyra's defiance. "You have broken the laws," one elder growled, stepping forward. "The weak are not meant to survive. You risk the pack's strength by harboring this creature." Lyra stood tall, though her paws trembled slightly. Fenn lay behind her, small but alert, watching every movement. She could not abandon him now. Not after everything. "This pup is hurt," Lyra said, her voice soft but unwavering. "It cannot survive on its own. I am giving it a chance. That is not weakness. It is life." The council murmured among themselves, voices rising and falling like wind through the trees. They saw her courage, yes, but they could not accept it. To them, compassion was a liability, a challenge to tradition, and Lyra's actions were a threat to the pack's order. Rion arrived silently, stepping onto the snow with the authority of a shadow over ice. The moment he appeared, the pack fell silent. His presence alone commanded respect, his dark fur glinting under the pale sunlight. He observed Lyra, his amber eyes fixed on her, and then he turned his attention to the council. "Let her speak," Rion said, his voice deep and commanding. "The pack will hear her." The council bristled, unused to being challenged, but they could not argue with the Alpha King. The silence stretched, heavy and tense. All eyes were on Lyra, who stood firm despite the pounding of her heart. "This pup is small and injured," Lyra said, taking a careful step forward. "Yes, it is weaker than others. But it has life, and it deserves to live. I do not seek to challenge the pack. I only seek to protect what cannot protect itself." A few of the higher-ranking wolves snorted in derision. "Life is not enough," one spat. "Strength is what matters. Your weakness endangers us all." Lyra met their gaze, unflinching. "Strength is not only in size or speed," she said. "Strength is in courage, in caring, in rising despite fear. Do you think it takes less courage to face danger with a fragile heart than with a strong body? No. I protect what cannot protect itself. I fight when I could flee. That is strength." Rion's jaw tightened. He had watched her every day, seen her patience, her determination, and her love for the pup. He knew her words were not empty, they were truth, carried in her heart and in every action she had taken. A sudden murmur ran through the pack as Fenn, small but confident now, stumbled forward slightly. It yipped softly, nuzzling Lyra's side, showing the bond that had grown between them. The sight struck something deep in the council. A quiet reminder that life, even fragile life, could hold power beyond measure. The tension was cut by a sudden, sharp howl from the edge of the forest. The pack froze, ears pricked. Danger lurked nearby, perhaps the predator from before, or something new. Lyra's paws instinctively moved closer to Fen, shielding him, while Rion's body tensed like a coiled shadow. One of the council wolves seized the moment to strike, stepping forward aggressively, ready to challenge Lyra. "You risk the pack for a worthless pup. We will not allow it." Before Lyra could respond, Rion stepped between them, massive and unyielding. "Enough," he growled. "This pup survives under her care. If you challenge it, you challenge me." The council faltered, unsure how to respond to the alpha's rare display of emotion. Amber eyes met amber eyes. Rion and Lyra. Something unspoken passed between them, a bond forged not of submission, but of recognition, respect, and an unexplainable tension that neither could ignore. The rival wolf, frustrated, lunged toward Fen, claws extended. Lyra froze in fear, her body trembling. But before the wolf could reach the pup, Rion moved with the speed and power of a shadow. He intercepted the attacker, forcing it back with a single swipe of his paw, teeth bared, eyes fierce. Lyra gasped, her heart pounding. She had never seen him this close in action. His strength was terrifying, yet controlled. And he had acted, not out of anger, but protection. Not for himself, but for her and the pup. When the rival wolf retreated, Rion turned, his gaze locking with Lyra's. Lyra felt her chest tighten, a strange heat rising where fear, awe, and something else mingled. "You are more than I expected," Rion said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "You are not just brave. You are remarkable." Lyra's ears twitched. "I am not remarkable," she said softly. "I just do what is right. That is all." Rion's amber eyes softened, though the authority in his stance remained. Sometimes, doing what is right is braver than any battle. The pack watched in silence, uncertainty rippling through them. They had followed rules their whole lives, rules that dictated life and death. And now, the Alpha King was challenging them not openly, but through the simple act of allowing this fragile Omega to protect the pup. Days turned into nights, and Lyra and Fen grew stronger together. The pup ran short distances, stumbling but improving every day, always returning to Lyra for warmth and safety. Her care had transformed it from a fragile, trembling creature into one capable of curiosity and play. And Rion continued to watch, more closely now. He did not approach as often, but when he did, he carried a quiet weight of interest. He had begun to see Lyra in a new light, not as an Omega, but as a wolf capable of inspiring courage and respect. Her gentle heart had challenged him, forced him to reconsider what true strength meant. One evening, Lyra sat on the snow outside the den, Fen sleeping at her side. She watched the blood-red moon rise, painting the forest in strange, haunting colors. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of danger and change. Rion emerged from the shadows once more. He moved with silent authority, his amber eyes fixed on her. "You have grown stronger," he said, his voice low, almost approving. "Not just the pup. You." Lyra's ears twitched. She felt a strange mixture of pride and apprehension. "I had no choice," she said softly. "I could not let Fen die." "Choice matters," Rion said. "But courage makes it meaningful." His gaze lingered on her, heavy and intense. "And yet, you are still an Omega. Others may not see what I see." Lyra's chest tightened, the wind tugging at her fur. "I do not care what they see," she whispered. "I know what I am, and I know what I can do." A distant howl echoed again from the forest, darker and deeper than before. Rion's ears twitched, muscles coiling like steel. Danger was coming, something that would test their courage, their trust, and the bond that had begun to grow between them. Lyra hugged Fen closer, her heart racing. But she no longer felt the same helplessness she had once carried. She had grown stronger, braver, and more determined. And she knew that Rion's gaze, though powerful and commanding, no longer intimidated her. Instead, it stirred something she could not yet name, a feeling of connection, of unspoken understanding, of something fragile and alive that might grow if nurtured. The forest waited, the snow fell in silence, and the pack, once rigid in its laws, began to sense that something had changed. The rejected Omega had defied tradition, and the Alpha King had watched and perhaps learned from her courage. Lyra looked at Fen, sleeping peacefully at her side, and then at Rion, standing in the shadows. She realized that the story of her life, of the pup she saved, and of the Alpha who watched her, was far from over. The forest had many secrets yet, and danger, change, and perhaps even love were waiting beyond the frozen trees. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Snow fell silently, blanketing the ground in white, muffling sound and motion. Lyra stood at the entrance of her den, Fen at her side, ears alert, body tense. The shadow that had loomed over them the night before was closer now, moving with purpose, its howl echoing through the trees like a warning. Rion emerged from the darkness, his fur glinting with frost, muscles coiled like a shadow, ready to strike. His amber eyes locked on the approaching figure, and Lyra felt a shiver run through her, not of fear, but anticipation. The Alpha King's presence had always been overwhelming. But now, standing together, there was a strange comfort in his silent strength. "Stay behind me," Rion said, his voice low but commanding. Lyra obeyed instinctively, positioning Fen behind her, her body tense yet steady. She had grown stronger in the weeks since she found the pup, and she no longer felt the helplessness that had once gripped her. Courage and care had become her shield. The shadow moved closer, and Lyra could see it clearly now, a massive wolf, larger than any she had seen before, its fur dark as midnight, eyes glowing with an eerie silver light. It was not part of their pack, not even from a neighboring territory. There was something unnatural about it, as if the forest itself had conjured it from whispers of fear. Rion growled. A deep, resonant sound that seemed to make the very snow vibrate. "This is no ordinary wolf," he said. "It tests strength and heart." Lyra's paws sank slightly into the snow. She glanced at Fen, who whimpered softly, but she knelt to nuzzle him, grounding both herself and the pup. "We can do this," she whispered. "Together." The silver-eyed wolf charged suddenly, fast as winter wind, and Rion leapt in front of Lyra, intercepting the attack. The force of the collision sent snow spraying in all directions. Lyra watched in awe and fear as Rion moved with both strength and precision, deflecting the wolf without harming it. His every action was calculated, protective, controlled. But there was an intensity in his eyes that told Lyra he was fighting not only for survival, but for her and Fen. Lyra rose to her paws. She could not fight like Rion, but she did not flee. Instead, she stepped forward, holding her ground, her voice steady despite the storm of fear and adrenaline coursing through her. "Stop," she shouted. "You cannot harm him, or us." The silver wolf hesitated, tilting its head. Its eyes, glowing but not entirely cruel, seemed to assess her. And in that moment, Lyra realized something: the creature was not attacking out of malice. It was testing them, probing the strength of their bond. Rion glanced at her, and for the first time, his expression softened. "You understand," he said quietly, almost to himself. "You see what I cannot see alone." Lyra took a deep breath. She moved closer to Fen, letting the pup nuzzle against her warmth. "We are not alone," she said. "We protect each other. That is strength." The silver wolf growled, then lunged again, but this time, it was different. Its attack was lighter, almost playful, testing, not harming. Rion intercepted once more, but his movements were less harsh, more cooperative. Lyra stepped forward again, meeting the wolf's gaze. She could feel the energy of the creature, wild and untamed, and yet strangely familiar. "You are strong," she whispered. "But your strength does not need to destroy. It can protect." 2. A long moment passed. The silver wolf lowered its head, the eerie glow in its eyes softening. It backed away slightly, circling them, observing. And then, without warning, it disappeared into the forest, vanishing as silently as it had come. Lyra exhaled shakily, relief and awe flooding through her. Fen nuzzled her side, tired, but unharmed. Rion stood close, his fur brushed with snow, muscles still tense. But his amber eyes, were softer now, fixed on her with a mixture of admiration and something deeper. "You did not falter," Rion said, his voice low, almost reverent. "Most would have fled, most would have panicked. But you stood, you protected, you led." Lyra looked up at him, her chest heaving. "I did not do it alone," she said softly. "Fen needed me. You helped without even touching me. That is why we survived." Rion's gaze lingered on her, intense and quiet. There was a tension between them, a bond forged not just in battle, but in trust, courage, and care. He had always commanded respect through fear and strength, but now, Lyra had commanded it through something far rarer. Heart. The wind shifted, carrying with it whispers from the distant forest. The pack, observing from afar, began to stir. The elders and higher-ranking wolves had seen the bond between Lyra, Fen, and Rion. They saw courage, strength, and heart all intertwined, challenging the old rules they had long enforced. Rion turned to them, his stance firm, authoritative. "She has proven her strength, not by dominance, but by protecting life. That is what makes her worthy of the pack's respect." The pack hesitated, uncertainty rippling through them. They had lived by rigid laws of strength and survival, but the undeniable truth now stood before them. Lyra had defied fear, nurtured courage, and survived where others might have failed. And Rion, the Alpha King, had acknowledged it. Lyra knelt beside Fen, brushing the snow from his fur. The pup's eyes gleamed, full of trust and affection. "We made it," she whispered, voice trembling with relief and pride. "We survived." Rion stepped closer, lowering his massive frame beside her. "We survived. Together," he said, amber eyes fixed on hers. The forest was silent, as if listening, holding its breath for what was about to unfold. Lyra looked at him, understanding at last that this bond, the bond forged in snow, courage, and compassion, was stronger than fear, stronger than tradition. And in that moment, she realized something she had never allowed herself to hope for. She was no longer invisible. She was seen. She was respected. She was acknowledged not as weak, not as fragile, but as someone extraordinary. Rion's gaze softened further, and for the first time, he lowered his head, touching her gently with his nose, a gesture of recognition, of trust, and of something far deeper than either had spoken. Lyra felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of awe, relief, and the first stirrings of something more, something neither fear nor tradition could control. The forest around them seemed to exhale, the snow settling softly on the frozen ground. Fen yipped softly, nudging Lyra, and the small gesture seemed to complete the circle. The pup, once frail and abandoned, was now strong. And the Omega who had saved it was no longer alone. Rion stepped back slightly, his eyes never leaving hers. "The forest will test us again," he said. "The pack may not yet understand. But we have proven something important tonight. Courage, care, and heart. They are as strong as any fang or claw. Lyra nodded, feeling a new resolve. She had found her place not just beside Fen, not just hidden in a den, but standing, strong and fearless, under the watchful gaze of the Alpha King. She was no longer an outcast. She was part of something larger, something that would shape not only her life but the life of the pack. The night deepened, the snow swirling softly, painting the forest in silver and shadow. Lyra felt Rion's presence beside her, steady and powerful, yet strangely comforting. She reached out a paw, and he met it halfway, a silent acknowledgement of trust, respect, and the bond that had grown between them. The world outside might still be harsh. The pack might still question. Danger might still lurk. But for now, in this moment, Lyra, Fen, and Rion stood together, unbroken, united by courage, compassion, and an unspoken connection that had been forged in the harshest winter of all. Lyra looked at Fen, at Rion, and then at the endless forest beyond. She felt something she had never felt before: hope. Hope that strength and heart could coexist. Hope that love, trust, and loyalty could overcome fear and tradition. And in the quiet hush of the snow-covered forest, she realized that she had found something more valuable than survival. She had found a family, and perhaps something like destiny.